Okay, this is for project 4.4, the bracket. And in Blackboard, I gave you the instructions to download the prototype file from Blackboard and go ahead and make the changes to that prototype. Set the unit, set the limit, set the text style, create those layers, and then save it as your own prototype file, because we're going to use this for 2 or 3 more drawings. And it'll just save you some time from having to recreate all those layers all over again. You want to turn on your miter box layer so that it's visible, and that's what these boxes here. I've showed you that in other videos. Before we go any further, let me show you what this looks like in 3D. So there's my isometric view of this thing. I think I got these slots the wrong size, but I'll check it. All right, so this was created in our Inventor software. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you maybe not, but it's a 3D parametric modeling. And so when you're drawing this in AutoCAD, this is going to be your front view. This is going to be your top view. And this will be your right side view. The only issue is with this, it doesn't show the hidden lines very well. I mean, they're there, but they're very faint. You can kind of hardly see them there in a little white. But that's what our object looks like. So, back to get started here. So our front view, we're going to have a rectangle that's like 6 inches long and 0.75 inches high. So let's start there and come over here. 6 tab 0.75. Okay. And let's draw the rib first. And honestly, it's easier if you kind of draw it and then move it. So I'm going to come over here with another rectangle, and it's going to be 0.6 wide. And then now we got to do a little bit of math. So it's 0.325 minus 0.75, which would be 2.5 tall. Okay, and now let's move that. And I want to choose the midpoint object snap here and move it to the midpoint object snap there. Now, if you want to, let's check that with a dimension 3.25. Okay. All right, now from here, we can draw the rear of the object across the back there. And so we'll go line, and we'll start it here. But now let me turn off ortho. I need to give it a relative coordinate, so I'm going to say at 1.2 in the x, 0.25 down. Oh, yeah, I should have used negatives. Okay. So that's going to be at minus 1.2 comma minus 0.25. There we go. And then I can just connect to that point. And that's got the left side of this thing. Okay, now then we have a hole that goes right here. So let's circle. We're given a diameter, so let's change that to our circle diameter command. And we're going to go with a snap from, and we'll come from here, and we're snapping to the right 1.95, and then up 1.25, Whoa, what happened to that? I'm not sure what happened there. Snap from there. Uh, at. Maybe that's what I didn't put in the at symbol. 1.95, comma, 1.25. Enter. And now for our diameter of 0.625. Okay, so that looks right. Now let's mirror these three things. So let's select those three objects and we'll go mirror, choose the midpoint of my rectangles. Okay, so let's get that. Now let's look at center marks. You had a video on how to change your system settings for the center lines and the center mark command. So we're going to show you two different ways to do that. So we're going to go annotate center mark and we'll click that circle there. Okay, so let's look at the properties on that and see what we've got. All right, so it should be on the center layer. Line type should be by layer. Line weight should be by layer. Cross size 0.12, cross gap 0.02, and then all extensions are 0.12. That's the way it should be. Now, a different way, and this is the old school way, and there are instances where you're going to use both, and you just have to kind of get used to what works out best for you. But let's go to the Annotate tab here, and hit the pull down on dimensions. Let's look at the standard dimension style, and we're going to go modify. And on this, in the symbols and arrows tab, right here, you have center marks. And the center mark line, if you check that, now what happens is we have a command where we can place a center mark in the old school way. But if this is checked, when you apply a radius or a diameter dimension to an object, it will automatically put a center line in. So once we start doing dimensioning, then we're going to see what's what. And so let's hit none and do this, okay? And so the command is dim center. And I select that circle and it doesn't put anything because I told it none. So let's go back to our, and let's change this to mark and make that 0.12. Go okay, close. Now let's go dim center again. And it puts a plus mark in there. Now let's look at this. What it does is it created two lines. And the length of that line is 0.24. So it's 2 times too big for what we would normally want, okay? So let's go back to our dimension style. And let's change this to center line, but make that 0.06. And you notice it didn't change this because these are just lines right here that just have a regular length. And so now let's go dim center again and apply here. And now we've got you know 4, 5, 6 lines that can be moved or edited or however. And sometimes this really is easier. So we see there the length of that is 0.12. It sticks out 0.06, which is really a little less than what it should, but it can be, changed. All right, so there's two different ways of doing it. But the problem is, let me delete that. Here's the problem. When you apply a, where's my dimension? Here we go. A diameter dimension to an object, it automatically places a center mark, but it places that on whatever layer you're on. So usually you're on your dimensioning layer when you're dimensioning, and it would place that center mark on your dimension layer. So the way we get around that is we would create a dimension style just for center marks if we're going to use the dim center command. Okay, and so in all our other dimension styles, center marks, center lines are turned off, but we have another one that we change to when we're going to use these center marks. So that's how some of these things work. For now, we can stick with our fast and speedy center mark command there. Okay, now we'll wait about doing these until we draw the top view. Where are we at on time? 11 minutes. Okay, for the top view now. Go back to my visible layer, and let's do a rectangle. Starting in that corner, that is 6 inches long and 3 inches deep. Okay. Now let's explode this because we want to do some copying and offsetting. So let's do an offset of 0.75. And choose that back line, and then we'll offset it forward. All right. Now, we've got another thing that we want to add. We want to add to our status bar down here. Oh, it's already turned on. So object snap tracking, if it's not turned on use, you want to go ahead and turn it on. And object snap tracking is this one right here. And so let's turn that on, and then on your object snaps, you should have perpendicular turned on here. And so we've got a couple of different ways that we can draw things here. We can either use construction lines, or we can project from one view to the next view. And so I'm going to show you both ways to do that. So let's start with our line command. And I want to come down and just kind of hover over that, and I get a snap until I come up and I intersect there, and then I left click. Ooh, I should have ortho turned on. I'll left click until I come up and I get a perpendicular snap there. Okay. All right, I'll do that again on the other side there for you to see. So I'll go line command. I've got my object snap tracking turned on, so I just hover over a point for just a little bit, and then I start dragging out, and you can see that green dash line that it's projecting. So I get to an intersection, and then I left click, and then drag on up. I get my perpendicular snap, and I'll left click. Okay. And there's different ways of doing these things. Okay, so you just have to work with what's good for you. Sometimes this method works great. Sometimes it kind of goes sideways on you and doesn't work quite as well. So let's do it one more time with the angles of these things. Okay. Now another method is the construction line method. So let's change over to that construction layer, and let's start our construction line command, which would be XL. And I want to go vertical, so I hit V on the keyboard, enter. And let's hit the quadrants and the centers of these circles. The center, let's not do the center. Okay, we'll pull it back on this one. And so that gives me the outside edges of the hole. So I can change over to my hidden layer and go line and just draw right on top of that. Okay. And so let's do that again over here on the other side. I mean, once you understand how to do these things, you can mirror and copy that stuff over. But I'm going to do it one more time here. So we'll go X line, vertical, and I'm going to do all 3 points this time. Oh, I didn't change my layer. Okay, now one of the things, if you're going to use construction lines, and in some of our classes, you have to use construction lines. There's just no way around it. You have to, because you're projecting things that can't be measured. So if you use construction lines, do not delete them. Just turn that layer off. Okay. So now we're on hidden lines, hidden layer. So let's draw the hidden lines here. And I'll switch over to my center layer. What happened? Okay, line. And let's draw a center line right there. Okay. Now I'm going to turn off my construction layer. Stay on my center layer and come back down here. All right. Now let's use the center line tool here to place this center line. And what you do is you select one line and then a second line, and it draws a center line between them. Okay. And it has the overhang like it was stated in our properties over here of 1/8 of an inch. Now, but there's no dash in the middle. We'll deal with the line type scale after we get finished drawing everything. Okay, and so now we need to fillet the front. So fillet command will be F, and let's check our radius of 0.75. And I'm going to do multiple since I've got 2 sides to do. Okay, and now we'll do the slot. And so we have a radius for the slot. So let's go circle radius. And in this particular case, it happens to be concentric with the arc on the front. So let's put it in there. My radius is 0.375, and I didn't change my layer, so let's change that. Now let's copy that. We got ortho turned on, so we'll go, not circle, copy. And choose the center of it as my base point. Come straight up 0.75 back, because that's the depth of the slot, and press enter. And then escape. And now we can draw lines using the quadrant object snaps. It still didn't change. My layer didn't take. Okay, and now we're going to trim. Okay, and so there's my my slot. Now let's look at center marks. Well, let's go ahead and mirror this first, and then we'll look at center marks as to how we can make them work. Okay. Let's go to center layer. Let's go back to the center mark command, and let's choose the outside arc. Okay. And then let's choose the small arc. Now, the problem being, yes, we want this to stick out outside of here, but this one doesn't need to stick out. So I could bring that into there. And then here, I can bring that side down, but we've still got some overlap here. So I'll grab the triangle and pull it down because we want to avoid any overlapping. Let's just go to properties and change the top extension to 0. Okay. We want to avoid any overlapping of lines because when you print it, it shows up when you're printing, okay, because you get double the amount of ink in that same place. And so let's look at this one as a dim center. And we'll repeat that command and come back here to do this. Okay. And now then we can take that line and actually delete it. And take this one and just drag it out a little bit longer. Take this one and drag it down a little bit shorter, so that it's about the same as that one at the top there. Okay, so there's two different ways of doing center marks for these kinds of things. Either way is acceptable. And when we get to the end of this project, and we're looking at our paper space layout, we'll come back and adjust these things to make them look right. So let's pause the video here, and we'll come back and do the right side view.